Greetings YouTubers, this is my final response in this particular debate. I'm sure that David will want to come back to me on some of the points that I make, but as far as I'm concerned that will be an end of it. I won't make any further responses. It's up to you to go away, do your own research and make up your minds as to which one of us is correct. Now, my knowledge of quantum mechanics is not extensive. I've done some reading around, but I do know someone who studied the subject in depth, and the following statement has been checked and qualified by him. The quantum field vacuum, or its equivalent, the zero-point field, is an omnipresent sea of fluctuating energy whose average value at any given time is zero. Now, the figure zero is used to describe the lowest possible energy that a quantum mechanical system may possess. It's the energy of the ground state of that system. The important thing to note here is that zero doesn't actually mean nothing, as in that which rocks dream about. In fact, the 0-point energy of the vacuum is absurdly large. So large, in fact, 1 cubic meter of this vacuum energy could easily boil off the world's oceans. So the creation of transient subatomic particles out of the fluctuations within this vacuum is not an example of something coming from nothing. If I were to walk into my kitchen and find there on the floor a puddle of milk, and I were to turn to my wife and say, "How did that happen?" and she were to reply that Zach, my 2-year-old son, did it, what do you think her response might be if my response were a flat, "Well, that's not an answer, that's a statement"? To say of the Big Bang that God did it is a perfectly acceptable answer. Granted, it doesn't go into the mechanics of exactly how it happened. It's not a scientific explanation, nor does it explain why he did it, which can only come from a revelation of God to us. But it is an explanation of how the universe came into existence. It's grounded in scientific knowledge, and it's inferred through the logic of the Kalam philosophical argument, which I have outlined in my videos. David asked, if God exists outside of time, then why can't the precursor of the primal singularity exist out of time? It, being non-personal, would then also be timeless. And let's just clarify. In this scenario, we're envisaging a non-personal precursor to our universe, of which our universe is a mechanical response. Certain conditions were met and, hey presto, our universe popped into being. Now, William Lane Craig answers why this is impossible by way of an analogy. Let me just quote him for you. It's from this book, The Case for Created by Lee Strobel. He says, water freezes at 0 degrees centigrade. If the temperature were below 0 degrees from eternity past, then any water that was around would be frozen from eternity past. It would be impossible for the water just to begin to freeze a finite amount of time ago. In other words, once the sufficient conditions were met, that is, the temperature was low enough, then the consequence would be that water would freeze automatically. So if the universe were a mere mechanical consequence that would occur whenever sufficient conditions were met, and the sufficient conditions were met eternally, then it would exist from eternity past. The effect would be co-eternal with the cause. If you're following me, or following him, how do you explain then the origin of a finite universe from a timeless cause? I can only think, he says, of one explanation, that the cause of the universe is a personal agent who has freedom of will. He can create a new effect without any antecedent determining conditions. David also said that it was possible that there was no causality prior to the creation of our universe. Now that seems to me to concur with Craig's statement. A universe that was a mere mechanical consequence of a non-personal precursor would be eternally coexistent with that precursor because the conditions necessary to give cause or give rise to it would have been met eternally. There can be no causality on that scenario. With regard to the jury being out on the necessity of causality within our universe, that simply means there's no current definitive evidence to contradict the statement, that everything that has a beginning has a cause. Things don't just pop into being out of nothing. Back to this question of a timeless mind. David has said that our consciousness cannot exist outside of our brain, that they're one and the same thing. And he cited the change in personalities of individuals who were brain damaged to corroborate this. Let me just clarify my position. I am not saying that our spirit, our mind, our consciousness, call it what you will, I'm not saying that our spirit and our brains operate independently of each other. Whilst our bodies are alive, our spirit is bound up inextricably with them. They affect each other. It's not surprising then that when the hardware is damaged, our brains are damaged, the software, the spirit, cannot operate properly, and our personalities appear altered. Now, David has said that the burden of proof is with, or lies with, the one who's made the extraordinary claim, as if his claim were any less extraordinary. They're simply competing claims. But is my claim just a statement of unverifiable fact? Well, no, it isn't. Amongst other things, research has been done into so-called near-death experiences. Let me read once again from Strobel. He talks about a journal article printed in Resuscitation, where he says that physician Sam Parnier and Peter Fenwick, a neuropsychiatrist at the Institute of Psychiatry in London, describe their study of 63 heart attack victims who were declared clinically dead, but were later revived and interviewed. About 10% reported having well-structured lucid thought processes with memory formation and reasoning during the time that their brains were not functioning. The effects of oxygen starvation or drugs, objections commonly offered by skeptics, were ruled out as factors. Later, the researchers found numerous cases that were similar. While large-scale studies are still needed, the once sceptical Parnier said the scientific findings so far would support the view that the mind, consciousness, or the soul is a separate entity from the brain. He speculated that the brain might serve as a mechanism to manifest the mind, much in the same way a television set manifests pictures and sounds from waves in the air. If an injury to the brain causes a person to lose some aspects of his mind or personality, this doesn't necessarily prove that the brain was the source of the mind. All it shows is that the apparatus was damaged.